We're at the 28th of May, 2026. We're going to get into the show right now. Sellers Only Agent. We're going to talk about what's going on in the 8 cities that consist here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Consist of, yeah. And then also North San Fernando Valley, because it is our neighbor, and I think people have questions regarding that. I'm Connor. Let's move into what's happening right now. So 1.2 months of inventory. So the way that this works, that's also known as the absorption rate. I've been doing this for, well, I don't know, since 98, so that's quite a while. In that period of time, absorption rate, I've seen various markets. I've seen where we've had 6 months of inventory, and when we've been down this low, 1.2 months. What this actually means is when you have real estate listings being sold off at a particular rate. You can gauge that rate. You can, and this is good for sellers to know too. Whenever we discuss putting your house on the market, that rate is important to talk about because it gives an idea on how long it's going to take a particular real estate listing to actually finish and sell. Now, if your house is a Goldilocks type house or stands out in some way, either good or bad, it could impact both of the variables. It could take a while to find that right buyer and so on. And of course, all of that's always fixed with price, but sometimes waiting a little bit longer without reducing the price actually pays off in the long run because your reductions of $10,000, $15,000, maybe that only extrapolates out to 2 or 3 more months of payments. And if you wait that long, maybe a buyer will come in and pick up the property because at the time you listed, maybe the right buyer wasn't ready and so on. So there's various adjustments that have to happen in any market, or at least should be considered as a seller. But right now we have this absorption rate. So at the current rate of sale, if no other properties came on the market within this little venue that we're talking about, it would take 1.2 months to get to zero. That would be no houses for sale. We would deplete the inventory. So right now there is still very little inventory, even though we've increased at least 20% since the numbers in February. So that's how many more properties are actually out there listed for sale. 307 properties actually moved. So these are properties that went in the last week, went from being active on the market into some form of escrow. There's 2 forms of escrow. When you're looking online, you might see properties that are in backup status, active under backup. Just kind of let me throw a little bit of knowledge your way. That's really not available. They put it out there as being available. And the big reason is because the agent still gets leads. They still get buyer inquiries on those properties. Me, I don't represent buyers at all. I'm a sellers only agent. There's a whole reason why I'm in that world. If you want to go to that site, feel free. sellersonlyagent.com. But some buyers still. So when they do put a listing on the market, they want to get more leads from it. So they make the property appear to be as if it's available. In some cases, I mean, incredibly rare, I could see an agent potentially taking people into a house to maybe get an idea what they're looking for. Because when you take a buyer, I did that for 21 years. I've been doing this 28. 21 years representing buyers as well as sellers. You take them into a property, it's really only then you really understand their criteria, really understand what's important to them and what isn't. You can shadow box it all day long, but until you get them into a house and look. And maybe there's something that fits their criteria, but it's not on the market anymore, and maybe the status is being pitched as active under contract. So maybe the agent, wants other people to come in. Typically, that's not the case. Typically, they're doing this to try to get extra leads from buyers. But 307 properties have moved into either that status or in pending status. Pending, typically, you're not going to see show up as it being active and wanting backup offers. Usually pending means you're not going to potentially see it. And usually pending is used when they don't want it. They don't want anything else generated. They really don't want to get phone calls, but we still get phone calls because the other agents potentially listing properties, they might call up and say, hey, I know we're not supposed to ask the question because it's not closed yet, because realistically, you're not supposed to expose what the property actually is in escrow for until it finishes, but you'll get appraisers call and they try to be nice and try to, warm you up, pillow talk you into telling them. Same thing with other agents. Hey, Connor, it's so-and-so. I'm listing one maybe next week. Just kind of want to feel it out and see what you're thinking as far as where you guys are in escrow. And of course, it's unlawful for me to release the information. But they try, and that's beautiful. Thank God they do. All right, so here we got couple different markets happening right here. In comparison, price per square foot housing price is more expensive in the San Fernando Valley. And I'm talking the cities that are just at our southern border here in Santa Clarita Valley, or that in closest proximity to us. And then in Santa Clarita Valley, we have 176 properties that moved versus the San Fernando Valley's 131. This is the last 7 days. Closed properties 48, San Fernando Valley 36. And as far as what's happening, median days on market 22.5 out here in Santa Clarita. Properties are picking up and selling faster in the San Fernando Valley upon comparison. And I'm running only residential, so I don't throw any other games in here. This is only single-family residences, condominiums, townhomes. The single-family residence has both attached and detached. Median close priced in the Santa Clarita Valley. The average is out to $739,995. Median close price, San Fernando Valley, $905,000. All right, so the 8-day gap. We have 8 days faster in the North Valley than in Santa Clarita Valley. That's the differentiation factor. Same buyer, same lender, same interest rates. Numbers tells you what happened, and the why tells you what to do. Also, here's something else, and I think this is really critical for people that are considering putting their house on the market or people that happen to be on the market. And again, if you're receiving this video, it's not meant as a solicitation if your house happens to be on the market. 55 listings in these areas failed to actually sell. They were either canceled, they expired, withdrawn, or they were put on hold in the past 7 days. Real sellers who never reached the finish line. Now, let's get to what some of these terms mean. Expired, and depending on your agreement with your agent, most agents take several month contracts. If they're doing the right thing, and you ask them, like if you were to ask me, what if a couple months in, we don't get any bites and I don't want to move forward, then I say, sure, we can cancel, and I put that in writing up front. I don't need a broker's blessing to cancel it. I have carte blanche to be able to cancel a listing as long as we're not in escrow with a buyer. I would just ask in the future, when you want to take another crack at it, you give me a call, because I've spent money up to this point advertising, marketing, photography, professional photography, drone shots, depending if they're applicable, all these other things. So that's what I would ask. But absolutely, no problem. Cancel it, piece of cake. That's expired. Canceled, of course, what I just mentioned. I put that in writing. Expired, typically it runs through the contractual length of time. Usually listings are taken at 3 to 6 months, sometimes more. That's where that cancellation clause should come in. And canceled would be if the seller changes their mind, and then, of course, withdrawn. If the property potentially is still going to be listed by that same agent, they pull it off for whatever reason. And then hold usually is some kind of a trauma happening. Maybe everybody got sick. Maybe there's a death in the family. Maybe they've had an internal flood or a fire, and they're trying to put it back together. Hold usually is that. Not supposed to be used because the agent's overwhelmed with a whole lot of phone calls from other agents. Just do your job, right? Okay. All right, so that's the way that one works. Santa Clarita Valley breaks down. There's failure rate, share of all activity. Santa Clarita Valley itself, 48 closed in the last 7 days, 29 failed, and that's about 16% failing. San Fernando Valley, interesting, 36 closed, 26 failed. That's a 20% failure rate of properties that were unable to make it. That happens frequently. People often ask, what's the deal with properties coming back on the market and they're for sale again after they were tied up for a while? A lot of people think that it has to do with something discovered in the residence. That's not always the case. In some cases, the buyer just simply changed their mind, or in some cases, the buyer went out and did something they probably shouldn't have, and maybe they didn't adhere to the warnings given by their agent, or maybe their agents knew, or maybe the agent doesn't have the intestinal fortitude required to pack the gear to serve in this beloved industry. And maybe they said they didn't tell him that, hey, you shouldn't go out and buy that new Ford Raptor while you're in escrow, because that's $130,000. And when you do that, maybe you don't have enough wherewithal to be able to float a new $130,000 payment on a vehicle, plus the mortgage that you happen to be trying to secure as you're in escrow. When you're done, the house closes, it's all yours, sure, whatever. But during the process, and even before the process, maybe your credit was run a few days ago. You go out with your agent, you find something, you write an offer, you go into escrow. I still, don't change it because that stuff keeps being watched throughout the process. It didn't used to be. It used to be once you were approved, there wasn't a lot that happened until the actual closing. But since 2007, when the subprimer fell, that kicked off the last foreclosure market that we saw. There's been a lot more double checking, a lot more fail-safe measures put in place, just so the banks don't, take it in the rear. All right, even at 1/5 of normal supply, listings do still die. Pattern's always the same, price wrong out of the gate. Yeah, that seems to be the issue. Now, a property price wrong might be below what you want to sell for. I think that's good that's good to know going in so you don't waste your time. Weak prep, bad photos, an agent who listed it and vanished. Yeah, that's funny. I don't know why that seems to be the thing. Sometimes agents are embarrassed, I guess, that the house isn't selling. As far as I'm concerned, if somebody's trusting me to sell their house, I'm going to bother them. And other agents will say this, well, you expect me to give you an update? Why would I take the time to give you an update when I'm actually working hard and actively trying to sell your home? Yeah, maybe that worked back in the 70s and 80s. That's the same way the commission structure is based, right? Times back then when houses were 5 digits in the sale of, $90,000, $50,000, $20,000. Now that's why I changed that whole commission model and threw it on its head. You can see more about that at 17K. Spell it out, 17K.com. All right. Weak prep, bad photos, and agent hot market failure is a preventable mistake. It's not the market. Why is the North Valley moving faster? Yeah, it seems always the case. Closer you get to LA, things tend to move a little bit faster. There's a larger influx of people. 8 days doesn't sound like much to a seller deciding when and how to list. But, 8 days is a big deal. 28 years of reading this market earns its keep. Those Valley properties do move a little bit faster than Santa Clarita. It's always been historically that way. Prices as well. Prices are higher in the San Fernando Valley than out here in Santa Clarita Valley. The questions you keep asking, the more I hear most from homeowners, I thought I'd throw this out here. Why is my house taking so long to sell? And that's where we need to get into a discussion as to where it is configured. This comes sometimes, bless you, this comes sometimes in when I'm a secondary listing agent. So they've hired somebody, that somebody couldn't sell it. They find me and I've heard it commented, wish we would have found you earlier. But then we have to have a discussion about pricing strategy. Because if it didn't work at this particular level, why would it work at that same level with a different agent? Now, if something was amiss, if the presentation was horrible, if the house wasn't placed in all the proper profiles online, maybe exposure could have been an issue. Maybe not enough eyeballs were seeing it. But usually at the very beginning, whenever an agent takes a listing, they input it into their multiple listing service. That system propagates to all these various syndication systems. You're going to see it on Realtor.com. You're going to see it on Zillow. You're going to see it on every other site out there. How it's configured, how those photographs are displayed, what it has attached to it extra, like 3D virtual tours with the hot pocket steps. Those are great. Drone footage, depending on if the drone's going to fit that particular profile, that's good too. It just depends on the listing. And then what were your instructions on taking care of the listing to get it prepared for the photography, and what it took, what you were prepared for or advised to prepare the interior. Counter space is big. Depersonalization is big. I still walk into houses that are just loaded with sellers' I love me walls and photographs of family. And it's difficult for people to detach from thinking that somebody else owns the house. Maybe there's a small little jealousy component. Maybe they can't imagine themselves being there unpacking those mental curtains because you have, you and yourself and, 50 different relatives posted on a wall as they walk up the stairs. That's tough. And people look at pictures. People don't look at painted pictures, not a big deal, but people look at real pictures. And it's kind of enthralling. Long compared to what? And then you need to look at this these different areas. Neighborhood real yardstick now: Valencia 28 days, Canyon Country 17, Granada Hills 24, Northridge 12, and that morphs all the time. Some up, some down, because we have an influx of properties being listed for sale. What do I do if I pass the normal days on market? Yeah, a couple things. So if you have a property on the market, you get to that 30-day period, and you don't have a lot of movement. It could be that their price reduction is in order. Why do I always jump at that? It doesn't have to be a big price reduction. Any price reduction kicks off a new level of marketing and advertising for the property, not just what your agent should be doing, but also how the MLS accepts that change. Once it changes, then it gets rolled out to all the syndication sites. And that's kind of a big deal. Syndication sites are where a lot of people are doing the search. Now, I run systems, scvmls.com, sfvmls.com, each one of those. But besides that, people are going to the main portals. And they see junk on there too. They're seeing lender stuff. Any information that's put on those systems, just be prepared. You're going to be hit up by a lot of agents, a lot of lenders, a lot of people that are interested in getting your business. So be wary. If you want to ask a question, I would stick to those SFV and SCV MLS sites whenever you're going to ask a question, because I'm the one answering. I don't even represent buyers, so that'll be very helpful. As far as if you do pass days on market, talk about potentially a pricing strategy, or talk about something that might be amiss from the listing. What can the agent do a little bit better? And that's such a horrible question, because they should have been doing better from the beginning. To then come into it and say, yeah, we could try this. Well, what the hell? Why didn't you try that earlier? Question 3, showings with no second showings. Yeah, that happens. When you get multiple showings, get ready. Usually an offer's coming in close proximity to that. Price per square foot above comps that actually closed, yeah, it should have something that indicates why that is. Price per square foot might be higher. An example would be if a property has a pool, one does not. The property with a pool usually will have a higher price per square foot. Maybe the one that has a higher price per square foot has better upgrades, better renovations. Maybe everything else is the same, but one's dated 1970 and the other one's dated 2026. Depends. And then crickets in the first 10 days. Not a big panic point, but usually that first release is important. One of the things that I would want to look at is what was prepared prior to release. What was all in order? Some agents are in such a hurry to get a house on the market, to the seller's detriment. They haven't prepared everything for releasing this out into the wild. They're holding back. They still don't have the photography or the photos, so they're missing some of this. I know they want to get into the MLS, and that's fine. I would hold it as coming soon and snap just one picture out front until you get all the other stuff in there, and then maybe give it a weekend before release. And that depends on seller's time frame, of course. And it also depends on the market. But yeah, I wouldn't panic unless it just wasn't prepared properly. And you have days on market creeping past the neighborhood median with no offer. Yeah, I think that would also be a concern, and that's where a good, strong agent's going to come in and sit down, and we'll have a discussion, a very mature discussion as to what's happening. It could be that the market's trending. We had interest rates creeping down, more people confident with the 10-year bond market, and that's where mortgage interest rates are based on. If you look at the Fed funds rate, that's the big one they have the meetings about, and why the president gets pissed off at the cat that's in there now, and why they're replacing him and all this other stuff. That's a whole different animal. That's the price, the cost that the banks get to trade money back and forth to each other for. So that's kind of their thing. Mortgages are based on a 10-year bond. So when we have little things like we're happening in the Middle East, when we have those type of events, people don't have a lot of confidence in the 10-year bond. So that creates higher interest rates. Hopefully those will come down. But that's what we saw. So if you were priced prior to the Strait of Hormuz issue, well, now it's going to be a little bit different, right? Things start to take a little bit longer. Plus, you have a little bit higher interest rates as well. And of course, the solve all statement to buyers out there, well, don't marry the rate, marry the house. Yeah, easy to say. What if the rates never come back down? What if they purchase predicated on hoping rates will come down? Don't ever do that. Don't do that at all. All right. Valencia, we have segment neighborhood spotlight. Valencia, we have 16 closed. Median closed price in Valencia for the last 7 days, 721, 495. Median days on market 28. Canyon Country closed 11. That's 7 days worth. Median close 812, 500. Median days on market 17 days. Granada Hills closed 9. Median close 985. See these price points higher. Days on market 24. Northridge moves pretty quick always. Closed 8 Northridge. Median close 1,337,500. And median days on market 12 days. That's definitely the winner this week. 63 days, Newhall median days on market. Rest of the market runs under 25 days. Newhall's dragging a little bit. Newhall, kind of the original community out here, named after the cat that came out to Santa Clarita and discovered it, I think, and bought it. I guess his wife was pretty pissed off. He bought all that land. It looks like it worked out well. I don't know if he got to enjoy it. Yeah, time does that. Gap tells the story. If it's your neighborhood, it is the story. In Santa Clarita Valley, what's going to close next? The pipeline. We have under contract 45 right now. North San Fernando Valley under contract 30. This is 8 and 8. I always do 8 and 8 cities. Most active in both of those. Santa Clarita Valley 8. North end of the San Fernando Valley. Those 8 cities. When somebody tells you the market's slowing, look at that pipeline. 75 homes already spoken for will close in the next 30 to 60 days, minus whatever falls out. 15, 20, 25% typically kind of fall out of escrow. And as I mentioned before, not always the fault of the house. Sometimes buyers change their mind. Sometimes buyers go out and buy that Mercedes or BMW and don't talk to anybody. Sellers only here. Please let me know if I can help you. I do pull the CRMLS data every morning. We talk about it here on this particular show. Starting a live broadcast tomorrow, it's going to have the same type of pitch. I don't know if I'm going to be able to put in the slides. We'll have to figure that out. If I can help you, please, sellersonlyagent.com. You can give me a call. And I'm Connor with Honor, and it's a pleasure. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Be well.